Welcome to the podcast. Today's guest is Dave George. Dave, welcome aboard, mate.
Hello, mate. How you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. Right, we finally got going after a few technical hiccups.
Yeah, a bit of a nightmare there.
For those that don't know, you're obviously on Instagram. Your username is River Carp Life, which obviously is self-explanatory.
Certainly is, yeah.
So I've seen quite a few pictures of you with some decent-looking carp from your boat. So if we could talk, obviously it's the close season on the rivers now, so if we could talk a little bit about how you got into it, and then we could maybe sort of roll on to a few catch stories would be good.
No worries. Got into carp fishing on the river in general, or?
Yeah. Let's go right back to the beginning, and then sort of let's talk about how you transitioned from maybe still waters to running water.
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, as a kid, I sort of local to where I grew up. We only ever had a small dike and a couple of ponds. There was no, really big rivers where I grew up, and that was, I guess, part of the reason when I did move out of where I grew up. I moved very close to the River Thames, and that was sort of around the age of 13, 14. And I guess it was just, a gradual progression. So I started on the side streams and the tributaries, targeting mainly sort of anything small that will take a maggot initially, and then, progressed on to chub. I caught my first chub, and that sort of, sparked a year or two of chasing chub. And then as I sort of progressed and caught my first couple of barbel, that again sort of, it sort of just sparked something in me, hard fighting.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, the hard fighting.
Exactly that, something I've never experienced before. And yeah, at the age of about 16, 17, when I initially started driving, I was obsessed with barbel fishing, and I used to travel all over the country doing it. For Warwickshire Avon, Hampshire Avon, Thames, the River Kennet. I spent a hell of a lot of time on the Reading and District tickets.
Nice.
And then from there, I guess I started to dabble on the Reading lakes. Yeah. I took a walk around Pingewood Lagoon once, and I sort of encountered my first sort of proper cagey carp fisherman who didn't want to tell me anything. Yeah. You sort of realize when you start talking to proper carp anglers that, it's a whole different thing, carp fishing. And as a barbel angler, I will be honest with you, I used to walk past carp fishermen's bivvies, right? And I used to look in there as if it was like some kind of industrial unit, massive, big beeping alarms, massive thick rods, all of this kit. And I was just like, that is just so over the top. I'm never going to be that type of angler. That was what I used to say, I'm never going to become, I always used to see myself as like a purist, quiver tipping for chub and barbel.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. After a little while, I started dabbling on the lakes, and I ended up down, I think it's at the back of, I think it's Englefield Lagoon. There's a little set of 4 lakes called Cottage Lane, and nobody used to fish it. It was just a quiet little area where I could go and just sort of, practice, I guess. And, caught a couple of carp, soon realized that they're just as powerful as barbel are, and they grow a hell of a lot bigger. And, I guess that was where the passion really started for the carp, sort of 17, 18, 19, somewhere around there. And I guess it was probably the summer following that. Me and my friend Dan, we'd always seen carp in this little sort of shallow sort of back channel that comes off of the river when we were young and targeting the chub. And we always used to say, one day we'll have a go for these. And that summer was the summer that we'd done that. I can remember going down to the stream. There was a good few fish swimming about. Dan managed to catch a 19-pound 2. The following day, I had my first ever fish from the river, which was a 12-pound, 12-ounce mirror, proper battered up old thing. That was after losing a real dark, gnarly little common at the net as well. Just inexperienced, just trying to pull too hard, fish backed me off. But yeah, the following day, I caught my first 20-pound carp from the river, which was a 26-pounder, and that was sort of it. It just sealed what I wanted to be doing. I knew that, just from sort of, the excitement and buzz and rush that I got from catching that fish, I knew that was the style of fishing that I was probably going to be doing for the next, for the next 10, 15 years. And it's become more of an obsession. Some people fish and they go once a week, twice a month, whatever. But I fish a lot. Literally, it's gone from doing. I spent the first few years of fishing on the Thames struggling my ass off.
Yeah.
Because there's only these spawning areas, for instance, and the places where you can actually see the fish. it's a whole different ball game when you're fishing somewhere like that. But when you're out in the main river, you've got depths of up to, I found depths of 20 foot just in a main straight, and
Right.
in the weirs it can go down even deeper. And after sort of 2 or 3 years of just sort of honing it and trying to understand exactly how to and when to, sort of thing, finding the best times to go, learning the craft as I went, understanding about locating fish, likely areas, clearing areas, getting the bait in. Then it was just a matter of the dedication, and I've always had that. Anything that I do, I always give it my all, and especially with my fishing. I totally understand with carp. You got to understand with carping on the Thames that it's not something you can do half-heartedly. You can get very lucky and catch a couple of carp. Don't get me wrong. If you get on some carp, generally you will catch them. But if you're fishing a stretch 4 or 5 miles long, 80 foot wide, 12, 15 foot deep, 9 to 12 foot deep average, it's very difficult to locate fish. Yeah. And everything about the river, I just love it. I'm probably going sort of back and forth here, but
no, that's fine, mate. Absolutely fine. When so when did you get your first boat?
That would have been. It was probably 3 or 4 years into fishing. So in fishing for the carp. So it was because obviously I used to do a lot of bank fishing, and the older guys on the stretch, a lot of them had boats. The older heads, and I saw their catch rates. I saw how well they were doing, and it inspired me to get a boat. The first boat I bought was what was it? It was a little John Dory boat, just an open top, and I put this sort of little bimini on it, and I covered it with an old bivvy skin overwrap. All right, and I had 2 beds in there, and the rod sort of went across the front of the boat, and it was just those days there were for me, the most exciting and the most fun. Yeah. Because there wasn't because I was so new to it, I still didn't sort of fully understand, the seriousness of how some anglers take it and about spots and all that sort of thing. And, going out on the boat, it was more just me looking for something that looked viable, or, I spent the first couple of years on the boat. I wouldn't even look for fish that much. It wasn't something that I really thought that I needed to do. I'd mainly just go to areas that seemed very carpy, and put a bit of bait in, and then I'd just progressively keep fishing that area until something happened. But yeah, boat fishing it's definitely another angle to carp fishing on the Thames. You can definitely get to places where other people can't, and that's the appeal. That is the appeal with boat fishing, and it hasn't changed ever since. I still own boats now, and I don't think I'd ever stop using a boat now.
Yeah, you mentioned obviously baiting up. I'd imagine that's quite a big factor.
Yeah, well, up until a few years ago, it was always I was limited to the amount that I could put in. In terms of using bait to attract carp into your area, yes, that's a given. But it's understanding when to do it, how much to give them, to keep a spot sort of rocking and moving, trying to keep the fish, interested. But yeah, it can become mega expensive. I used to think that a kilo of bait was enough to see a spot good for a couple of weeks. Like it, completely underestimated the amount of bait that it can take to get a spot proper rocking. But now, about a few years ago, I was fortunate enough to get picked up by Nash. I'm now a consultant for Nash, and I fortunately get bait and tackle and stuff at a bit of a better rate. So it allows me to put a little bit more bait in, improving the catch rate. That's a definite.
Yeah. Brilliant. With in terms of that baiting, are you just using larger baits just to try and sort of minimise anything else?
Well,
getting to them.
To be honest, I don't think there's a bait that a nuisance fish couldn't pick up, because it's a matter of getting the hook in their mouth and not so much the bait. Yeah. I've used double 18s with a 15mm topper and still catch bream.
Yeah.
But yeah, in general, if I was gonna fish a spot on the river, initially I would clear it with particle, corn, vitalin, anything that really stands out and is going to attract fish down from above as they're passing, especially if it's a new spot. And then progressively, as the carp move in, and you want the bream and the chub and whatever else to move out, level it up to big boilies, and just generally the way that I do it.
Are you having to fish? I'd imagine, obviously, with it being sort of a river, there must be all sorts of snags.
Literally, full size trees, especially in the winter, as the autumn kicks in, the debris definitely picks up, the winds come. Yes, snags a lot, but it all depends on where you fish. There are specific areas on the river that you will never get a snag floating through just because of the flow of the actual water itself. So if you're selective of where you fish, you don't have to worry about snags at all. But in terms of snags under the water, hell yeah, there's cars in one of the stretches that I fish. There's bikes, there's sunken boats, there's trolleys, there's a whole heap of stuff down there. Bikes, lots of push bikes, loads of stolen push bikes just chucked in off the edge. I've pulled out many. But fishing on the river is awesome, man.
Yeah, and I assume, obviously, with that in mind, you're having to sort of beef up to accommodate that sort of tackle in your own tackle.
Well, to be honest, I generally use 15 to 20 pound main lines, and I will always use I use the leadless leaders from Nash, the Klingon leadless leaders.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, size 4 hooks, 15 pound skin link hook lengths. It's nothing too taxing. If I was fishing somewhere to snags, I might beef up some, but I follow the same sort of pattern. I don't like to change things. Once something works for me, I stick to it for as long as I can.
Yeah. With obviously, because I'd imagine locating the carp is, as you say, can be an absolute mission in its own right with such a vast expanse of water.
Locating fish early season. So spring, as the water starts to clear after winter, so from sort of nowish, the water's going to start to clear, the clarity is going to get better as the sediment drops and the water slows. That makes finding the carp well easy. The problem is, if you can find them, every other bugger can find them.
That's
what
I was going to say. I mean, how do you sort of try and remain keep an edge above everyone else?
So at the end of the day, it's competitive at the beginning of the season. Everyone's been off for 3 months.
Yeah.
Everybody's found the fish already. You'll be going to look at the areas where the fish are holding, and there'll be other anglers there. You'll have bantering back and forth. Who's going to get down there fastest? But I did get involved in that in my early days. Of course we did. But now what I tend to do is I said it on my YouTube recently. What I'll do at the beginning of the season is mid-season, I will go out and I will look where the weed is growing densely, because it doesn't always grow as dense in the same places. Sometimes some years it will be like a football pitch across the top. Other years it will be very sparse. So I always try to look for that denser weed.
Yeah.
Because the fish don't follow a specific pattern every year. On one of the stretches that I fish, there's 5 spawning areas, and sometimes they will spawn at different times. But yeah, going back to what we're saying. It is, it's very sort of competitive early season. The best thing that I find to do is, try to establish a spot not too far from a spawning area, from an area where, if I've located fish in the close season, then what I will be doing is, picking a spot very close to that area and baiting it, so that I know if everybody comes to that area and starts smashing them, they're just going to push out. And where are they going to go next? Ideally to my spot, which is baited just up the river, which other people can't fish to. That is my that's how I stay above it. That answering your question, that's how I stay above it. A little bit of a tangent there.
Yeah, no, that's fine, mate.
I do that, man.
And then again, I suppose you obviously, how do you gauge? Like you say, you've obviously got to feed off those, not nuisance, but smaller fish first. I mean, does that just come with experience, the sheer amount of bait you have to get through?
To be honest, back in the day, bream stocks were massive in the river. It's only bream and chub, and I'd only see bream as nuisance fish. I like to catch chub. I like to catch any others. I'm not completely anti-bream, all right? Yeah. But I just don't like the way they smell. If you bring one into the boat and they start flapping about, it just leaves snot all over the place, and it smells. And if you I've had nights where I catch one every 20 minutes, and that's when you start going insane and you start going up on the boilie size. But it doesn't stop them. But no, how I see it is, if you've got bream in your swim, that isn't. It's very likely there's going to be some carp local to there as well. And what I try to do is just put enough bait in for the bream to do what they're doing, bugger off, and then for the carp to move in after. There's no way in truth, there's no way to feed off smaller fish. If they're going to be a pest to you, they're going to be a pest to you. If you've got your angling right on the river, you're going to be fishing for carp. There's always going to be a few bream lingering about, but sometimes I just consistently just catch carp. The bream don't even bother me. So I just take the rough with the smooth, just like all types of fishing. Deal with the nuisance fish. If you want to fish on the river, you have to get used to catching bream, because I catch 50 to 100 bream every year. All of them 8 to 10 to 12 pound. It's normal. But yeah, I mean, like I said at the beginning, the stock on those bream, because they are what I would call a mugfish. They get caught very easily. You can catch 20 of them on a pot of corn, and a lot of them have been taken and eaten for the pot. Unfortunately, it's the truth. Over the last 5-10 years, the bream numbers. Like I used to put my underwater cameras in certain areas, and mate, the bream stocks. I don't know if there's a video also on YouTube. I think it's Belloc and Weir. And the bream stock in there looks pretty massive. It's like 60, 70, 80, probably like double or triple that amount. I guarantee you it's not even a half of that anymore. Lots of fish get taken, Bream from the Thames gets sold at markets in London to foreign people. That? They barrel them up in big blue barrels, take them down to the markets and sell them at £5 a pop. My mate Peter Check told me that. I am deadly serious. But nuisance fish, you just got to get used to it. Deal with it, or just don't fish the river. It's pretty simple.
What do you do for a living, Dave? And how does it how much fishing time do you get?
Yeah, so basically I run a window cleaning business in Berkshire, Buckinghamshire and Berkshire. Basically I'm fortunate enough, I work for myself, so I can pick and choose. I can go to work what time I like. I can stop whenever I like. I'm very sort of free in that respect. And going forward from April, May of this year, I'm actually going to be having a full-time employee.
Right.
And he's going to be taking over a massive chunk of my work. So hopefully this year is going to be set up for 3 days, well, potentially 5 days a week fishing.
Right. And is that nights, or will you do day sessions, or?
No, straight night. Like in general, if I'm working, I'll arrange it. So generally I'll get to work for 10. I'll finish at about 3, 4 o'clock. Right. And then I'll go home, spend a couple of hours with the family and get down to the boat. I'll fish through the night until generally, dependent on when I want to go to work. And if it is going off and I'm catching fish, then work gets pushed back. Unfortunately, I prefer to fish and enjoy my life over trying to make money. I'm all about making memories than money, straight up.
Well, you've got an understanding missus then.
Yeah, well, I've been with my missus 16 years, since we were both 17, 18, we've got 2 kids together. We're pretty solid, and just like any couple, man, if you spend too much time together, you bicker, don't you? So me being away from, we're healthier because of fishing. Right. She will tell you that herself. Mine and my partner's relationship is great because I spend at least 3 nights a week, sometimes 4, sometimes more, on my boat. On the boat. It's comfortable. It's a beautiful way of life. Spending time on the water, it's great for your mental health. Being alone, amongst your own thoughts, it's gives you time to think and reflect and stuff. And it helps me. I don't get grumpy. This last year has been one of the worst years. I haven't been able to get out and do my nights and stuff, and it's been pretty tough. A lot of people in the fishing scene is going to be feeling that. I guarantee.
Yeah. No, I completely agree, mate.
It's been a painful year.
Tend, obviously, because you're on a boat, do you, and being self-employed, do you ever find you have to sort of take your computer or an iPad and do a bit of work once the rods are out?
The only thing, fortunately, that I have to do with work is just book in my customers for the following day, and I do it all through text message. My business is run through text messages.
Right.
So yes, don't have to worry about none of that. Fortunately, that's why I picked my my easy job role. It is an absolutely beautiful living, trust me. Except when it comes to winter, all right. When it's cold and raining outside, it's not too clever. But this is why I'm moving towards running the business instead of doing the legwork for the business.
Very wise, mate. Very wise.
Mm.
But then again, it brings its own stresses. You need to just
It does,
be, I think, really clear from the start, like what you expect from your employees.
Of course, I mean, I've employed people for the last 10 years, but they've been working with me, and I do struggle to I struggle to manage people because I know how I want people to work, but I don't want to be a dick to people, you know. I don't want people to feel like I'm a bad boss, and you know. End of the day, I always say treat your staff well, and they will work well for you. You know, and that's the main thing. Pay them well, you know. Make sure that they get days off when they want them. You know, keep that mutual respect between you, and
I completely agree with that, mate. It goes a long way, and just being a bit more flexible, like you say. If they need a day off for something, that goes a long way, doesn't it? Both ways.
And with this trade as well, nobody cares if you come a day late. You know, there's so much flexibility. Sometimes you might get a customer who gets a bit shitty, but they get dropped. They get dropped, and I pick up another one. It's easy. Love it. Honestly, it's you know, it's a dull title. You know, I say to people ask me when I'm out and about, like, oh, what do you do for a living, man? I'm like, I'm a window cleaner, and they sort of look at me like, for real? And I was like, I probably make more money than you do, son. So, you know, don't get funny about it. You know, when you're pulling 30, 40, 50 quid an hour more on the weekends, it's insane money for scrubbing down someone's windows. You know, it don't need to be glamorous. It just needs to pay the bills.
No, exactly that, mate. Yeah, and you're sat there on your boat 3, 4, 5 nights a week.
Exactly that. Exactly
living your dream.
Yeah. To be honest, it's, you know, there's a lot to it. You know, you know, there's certain goals and aspects and things why I'm out there. I'm not just doing it for. It is a passion. It is a hobby. It is a love. But there's certain things that I want to achieve. You know, do you know what I mean? There's certain things that I want to get done. Especially with the fact now that the otters are establishing themselves on the rivers, you know, massively.
Yeah, I was going to come on to that.
Yeah.
Let's just talk a bit about that. That'd be good, mate.
That's it. Well, so let me start with the otters. Like, for one, I am not that sort of guy who would say death to all otters. I am not that cruel, but at the same time, it is so painful that their staple diet is something that all of us have a massive love and passion for. And unfortunately, so there's a stretch just down the river from where I fish, and it's really natural. And there's a woman who lives there. I'm not going to say her name, but she lives in a proper 15, 20 million pound house. And she basically doesn't like boats coming past the front of her house, to fish. She owns both banks. She bought the island. She bought everything. So if you want to fish that stretch, you basically have to stay on the water and spin as you go, you know, or you have to keep somebody move. Almost, you know, the boat has to be, you know, about riparian rights and stuff.
No.
If you're on a river and somebody owns both banks,
right?
If you drop an anchor, you are on their ground. They don't own the water, but they own the riverbed from halfway from their property. You know, do you understand where I'm coming from? They own, you know, from the side of their garden, halfway out of the river, they own that land on the bottom. So if you drop an anchor on it, they can ask you to move. So you understand? And anyway, because she was so anal about it, she went to court. She tried to privatise the whole stretch of water, which the EA obviously threw out. Instead of that, the bugger went and released 8 otters on her own, off her own back. There was no sort of laws check. There was no sort of asked or question. She just done it to ruin the stock of that area. Over the past few years, I've seen dead barbel floating down the stretch there. The bird life on that stretch is dead. You know, the birds don't nest there because the otters have thrived so much. I started to fish that stretch back in 2019, and I saw numerous otters, you know, especially just on dusk. And they're serious swimmers as well. You can see an otter, it will go under and you won't see it again. You know, with corms, grebes, all that sort of stuff. They'll go under, but they'll pop up very, you know, soon after. They can hold their breath for very long periods of time. Anyway, obviously they're established there. We also know what's going on at the moment with the reintroduction of otters all over the place. And just last year, for instance, you know, this is what worries me the most. One of the stretches that I have dedicated a bit of time to, a stretch that has accounted for many of my good fish, you know, proper close to my heart. It pains me to say this to you. Basically, the otters, my mate bought a bit of land up there, 120 grand, a couple of years back, and it's like floodplain, so you can't build on it or anything. And they're sectioned off into three sections. And I think it was early 2019, one of the best fish in the river, the best fish in the river, that massive fish that Nick caught, Nick Helliar, it floated up dead. People weren't sure if it had been ottered, whether it had died of old age. There were numerous stories. And, you know, it was just in the balance. Was that an otter? Did it die of old age?
Yeah.
Now, fast forward to this year, and I just got a message sent through to me a couple of weeks back from my mate James Donnell. And he basically sent me a picture of a fish. He said, "You know this fish, Dave?" And it is a fish that I know very well. It was like the 5th or 6th fish that I ever caught. It was £29.12. My mate Milne used to call it collars and cuffs. It's like a proper two-tone dinosaur.
Right.
And basically sent me a picture of it, and the stomach had been completely eaten out of it, and there was other fish around it as well. There was 6. I think he said there was 5 or 6 fish. Now these fish weren't there 6 months, 8 months previously. So if we're working at a fish a month, and that stretch has only got 70 fish in it, 80 fish in it, you know, do the maths, man. 5-10 years from now, the stretch is going to be dead. And listen, it's not just that stretch. There are otters throughout the Thames now. They're actually on my main stretch that I fish.
Yeah.
And I know this because they're actually, when it flooded out, they were eating fish out of the lakes. You know, that's how I found out, because the people in the lakes were up in arms saying, "Oh, where have these otters come from?" Because the river was so flooded and they couldn't feed in it properly.
Out,
They moved out onto they're literally, those lakes, they're like flipping dinner bowls, mate. You know, and once they get a hold of them, it does pain me. But, you know, as a man who loves all kind of nature, it's a tough subject, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's painful, and it's part and parcel of the reason why over these next 2 to 3 seasons, I'm going to be putting in so much time and effort into this, just to sort of, you know, try and get some more of these fish before they all disappear. There's a guy, what's his name? He's Dave. He uses this phrase about otter dodgers. I used to see him. I can't remember what river he fishes. He used to say otter dodgers, and I was like, you know, we don't have to deal with that. But, you know, 3, 4, 5 years later, you know, we're on the verge of the Thames just being ruined. The EA don't care about it. They're quite happy to release them, or whoever it is who is releasing them. So my biggest fear with it, you know, my last word on it really, my biggest fear is that these numbers are not going to be controlled. They're only going to be controlled by people like, not necessarily me and you, but, you know, people who have a passion for fishing, or, you know, like with lake owners, you've got people who come out and they do shoot cormorants. I know people who are doing these sorts of things, and granted, them sort of things are going to happen, but I can see that the numbers of these otters getting seriously out of control.
Yeah.
So if they're not controlled, then, you know, the wildlife in this country, especially aquatic wildlife, birds, fish, frogs, you know, they're all under massive threat of just, you know, people think that they can't create that much damage. If there's a massive number of those things, nothing predates on otters in this country.
That's what I was going to say. There's nothing above them, is there?
Exactly that. You know, they are an apex predator, and they love to eat what we have a passion for. So it's always going to be a touchy subject, man. You know, but yeah, you've just got, you know, fortunately, some lakes are putting up these otter fences, and, you know, trying to protect their stock. But you know, I seriously,
water park by us as well. There's some that can be fenced, just some that can't, because they've got public rights of way, and it's just not feasible.
You know, I find
done their thing.
Exactly. I honestly find that, you know, people always said to me, "You've got to hold it down on the Thames. You don't want to be sharing what you're doing." You know, there's a lot of drama and stresses that come with things on the Thames. But now I think that a lot of them are probably going to be changing their stance on that, in a sense of, the more people that are on the river, especially anglers, the more you're going to be able to deter that sort of thing from happening if you see it or witness it, or, you know, it's...
so that's obviously formulated, or not forced your hand, but sort of given you that extra motivation to really go for it. Yeah.
Well, I've recently said, you know, there's only so much time you can spend on a place, you know, without wanting to move on to other dreams and other things that you want to be doing. And, you know, I hope over the next couple of years I'm going to be able to just get a couple more of these targets, that, you know, things that I've really wanted to do, out of the way.
So how do you go about picking a target on a water such as the Thames then?
To be honest, I don't. If I see specific fish, I might be like, yeah, I'd love to have that one. But, you know, let's be real here. Fish in the Thames do not stay. They don't always stay in the same stretch. So you can think that you're fishing a stretch. People, I've seen this happen firsthand, and it is painful to watch when it happens to someone. But you can be fishing a stretch for a target fish, and then that fish can move through the lock, and it can be caught by somebody else.
Yeah.
Same way, there are also resident, like in stretches, you'll have a resident and you'll have travelers. Some fish will not move, whether it's through comfortability, whether it's through fear of going through the locks and with the boats and all the noise. And then you get confident fish. There's a fish that that Terry had way back in the day at, like, I don't know what it was. I think it was like 18, 20 pound down in, like, somewhere down London way.
Right.
And that fish I caught in 2018, I think it works out about 15 locks up, 20 locks up. So it's a fish called moon scale. I caught it at 34 pound. I believe Terry actually caught it again in his more recent video.
Right.
It tells you, don't try and target a fish on the river unless you can really if you can get in with the local fisherman on the stretch, right, properly, and there's a mutual respect amongst you all. People will tell you what resident fish are in a stretch if they know enough.
That must be the big draw, like the not knowing.
Yeah, look, I mean, I say it, explore the unknown. Unknown fishing, to me, it's the most exciting. Don't get me wrong. There's fish out there that I'd love to catch. I see, that history fish, fish that people have all caught, and beautiful fish. But for me, there's nothing wrong with doing that. There's nothing wrong with, going to anywhere and fishing. But when it comes to the mystery, and when you go to the river, you honestly don't know what you're catching. If you get a peeler, for instance, and it proper starts tanking, the buzz that you get from that is not it. I can't say for sure, but I'd imagine it's a lot more than on a lake where the stock. Yeah. You can almost guess which fish it might be, and I just love that. I love the excitement that builds. But no, at the end of the day, the Thames is full of good fish, small fish. Fish continually flood in. My first ever 20 I caught about 12, 15 years ago. I caught that fish in the Thames in 2018. It had flooded in. Right. I got blamed for putting it in the Thames, but I didn't. You know what I mean? It flooded out along with a load of other stock from this lovely little 3-acre lake that had some bangers in it. But unfortunately, a few of them are now in the river, which is great. Natural stocking is still going on now, and we need that. We do need that. Back on the otter subject, stocking of the Thames would be a good shout, just because it will help. It will help maintain the numbers for future generations, because if the otters get stuck in, there ain't going to be nothing for them. Yeah,
of course.
Just the odd one, just the odd otter dodger, as Dave would say.
Yeah. Do you? How does it work? Do you have to pay for your fishing, or is it all free fishing on Thames?
Well, it's a river license. You need your rod license. My expense is the boat, insurance, boat safety certificates. You also need a mooring. You can pirate the boats around, but people don't like it. If you stay in areas where you haven't got a camera on your boat, like I've found out before, boats are not safe. I've had so many issues on the river over the years. I find being in a nice secure marina at the expense of 200-300 quid a month, it's more than worth it.
Yeah. Peace of mind.
But obviously, there are certain stretches and club stretches, and some people might get a bit shitty with you if you try and just plot up your boat on the site where they pay 30, 40, 50 quid a year to fish on, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, if generally I'll stay away from those areas. I will fish those stretches, but I won't fish the banks that they are entitled to. And if I want to, I'll go and buy the ticket. But generally, it's all about free fishing, making the most of free fishing,
Brilliant. Yeah, it sounds mega, mate.
Because lakes are one thing, but they also cost a lot, especially the real sought after ones.
Oh, yeah.
You're looking sort of £6,000 to £1,000 and above.
Yeah.
And I can't, I can afford it, but I don't want to. I'd rather not pay that when I can go out and catch some equally beautiful fish. From a free water.
Yeah, no, absolutely, mate.
Nothing better.
Yeah, definitely. Can we have a little chat about some of your sort of previous captures from the river?
I mean, I can tell you about one capture that really sticks out in my mind, which is basically this mass. So basically, I I have an obsession with big commons. Like, I love a big common. I love mirrors. I love scaly fish. But basically, I've been lucky enough to catch 15, 16, 30-pound mirrors out the Thames now.
Right.
And I have caught numerous commons, but only up to sort of the 28, 29-pound mark.
Right.
And back in, I think it was 2017. I'd been going in. The season had started. Okay, the fish were late spawning, and I was actually in a stretch above, and I'd been catching a few. And every time I come back down a river to where I was keeping my boat, I started to notice this area that I hadn't noticed before. Going back to what I was saying about. Certain patterns change. Yeah? I'd never spotted them here before. The weed growth was insane, and they were just there. I'm talking like 50 fish. Yeah, a lot of fish, and probably 100 bream as well. The bream were all flipping mutilated looking from all the spawning nodules. The water and the weed absolutely stank, and my goal was, because they weren't doing this in the stretch above for whatever reason, I was keeping catching fish from above, and every time I come back past there in the morning or on my way back to work or past it on the way back up to go at night, I was just waiting for them. It was only 2-3 days. 2-3 days. Obviously, I'm out at the moment because fishing's good. In and amongst this group of 50 fish, in this slack little area, dense weed, there was this common down there. And I would have said it was a 30 plus, heavy set, dark, deep. And it was a possibility for me to potentially catch this 30-pound common. So I basically bedded down into that spot. I stopped fishing where I'd prepped and baited and I was already catching fish from, and I just focused on trying to catch this common, thinking that it was 30-pound plus. And basically, I'd had a few fish from her. The fish had stopped spawning, and one thing that I like to do is I will not bait in and amongst the weed. Yeah, I will fish chods into weed if there's naked chods in weed if there's fish there. But obviously, fish are spawning. I'm not even getting involved with it. I don't even want to bait in and amongst them. So what I do is I'll bait off of the weed. So as they're coming out of that weed back into the main current, for whatever reason, then they're coming across this bed of bait.
Yeah.
And over a couple of sort of, I don't know, about a few days anyway, managed to catch a few fish, and because I'd caught a few, a friend of mine sort of gave me a shout. He's like, "Oh, you don't mind if I come and do a night with you, do you?" I was like, "Yeah, of course, mate. Come along. I'm more than happy." Especially, this guy, my mate Chris. I've done a lot of fishing with him. There's no sort of bad vibes there. I was just like, "Yeah, come down, man. Come and get involved in this. They're going in." This spot was going off. In the mornings they were lumping everywhere. It was. I'm telling you now, it's the most exciting fishing. Where fish don't top on the Thames, and around spawning time especially, and early mornings, 4 or 5 o'clock after a bit of rain, you see fish top. So if you're finding it hard to find some fish, definitely go up early when it rains. But yeah, he's come down. He's got a little rib. I'm basically in the weed. Okay, anchored up. I just got 2 anchors, one off the front, one off the back. He's moored up on the right hand side of me, and why should we put the rods dip? And I said to him, "Look, I'm going to go right," because I was getting bites from the right. So I was like, "Look, you can just fish off to the left, whatever." About, what was it? About 11 o'clock that night, I believe Chris had a fish, nice scaly one. And I was regretting going to the right a bit, as you can imagine. And about 4:30 the next morning, Chris is fast asleep. We're both tucked inside this little 16-foot cabin boat. And woke up, literally grabbed hold of my rod, and as I bent into this fish, I knew it was a good, but there was no stopping it. I had the rod at the time would probably have been like a 3 1/4 grays GT 550. I think that's what I was using at the time. And the rod was, it was going double, and the fish just took off from just off the side of the weed. And I hadn't woken Chris up by this point. He was just staring. And the fish it took about 60 yards straight over to the opposite bank, which is a concrete wall. And it went left, and it just went and went and went. And I said to Chris, I was just like, "Mate, you need to get up." I was like, get up, start the engine on that little rib. Because I could not stop this fish. It was a beast. Still not fully sure of what it was, yeah? Let's bear that in mind at this point.
Yeah.
But it is flat rodding me. And I was scared because it was going at such a pace. I was thinking, if I bend down on this hook's going to pull out. And I was thinking this could potentially be like a monster. Obviously, I don't know if it's the same on lakes and stuff, but in the river, commons are notoriously a lot harder fighting than mirrors, and linears as well. Lins go absolutely savage. But no, so yeah, we're about 5 minutes into the fight. Chris is dragging his ass up out of his bed. He's jumped off the side of the boat, started up the little 2.5 yammy, tied off. He's like, get in, jumped in. I'm on the front of the boat and I am just winding down. This fish had probably got about 150 yards on me. It went. And, there's a nice bit of sort of mist coming up off the water in the morning. It is deadly quiet. All you can hear is the clutch and the purr of the little engine. And, we're off. We're off upstream. And we get over the top of this fish and it just stayed really, really deep. It was right out in the middle of the river. You can imagine it just... we pulled the engine up and out so the prop wasn't in the water now. And we're just sort of backing and forth. And all of a sudden I see it. It's the common. It's the massive common that I was saying, this is what I'm here for. I couldn't believe it. Honestly, couldn't believe it. Must have taken, oh, mate. It like when you know what it is and you're just begging it not to come off. Yeah. And it just kept on. Every time I got it near the net, it would just, it was like a barb. It was like, zzz, 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 straight back down into the deep. And I was, Chris was like, Dave, get it done. Stop milking it. And I wasn't milking it. It was, as I say, this common is a machine. For any of you that want to see it, go into my my Instagram page and it'll be there somewhere. A big, dark, long body common, a paddle absolutely savage on it. But yeah, that was it. I ended up scooping the net under it and we slowly drifted back downstream, sort of, after a little after a little high five and yes, do you know what I mean? Calling out into the distance, echoing down the valley. Oh, mate, I was absolutely buzzing. And I could have swore to God it was like 38, 40 pounds. If you see the picture of this common, like anybody would say it, everybody messaged me, oh, that's that 30 you've been after, but it wasn't. It was like 20, 28 something. Oh, right. Not that I was gutted because, the fight in itself was amazing. That's just one of those moments that proper stick out to me. Sorry if that dragged on a little bit there.
No, mate.
But that was one of those moments shared with one of my really good friends as well. Buzzing.
Oh, that's the best, isn't it? When someone else is there.
Exactly that. And not only that, if I catch fish, I always retain them for an hour, for half an hour, an hour. I will never just slip a fish straight back. I see it like chub fishing. You catch a chub, you release it, it will go and spook the shoal. So I kept the fish in the retainer off the side of the boat, and the rod went back out, and we had another one, a proper gnarly common. It was missing one of its, is it the pectorals?
The ones
the ones at the front underneath, yeah. The ones under its body a bit further back. Right. I think either way, it was gnarly. It had one of those completely sliced off, but it was to look at the actual fish itself was, don't get me wrong, that wound had healed completely. It was clearly happy and living a full life, still completely, hungry and feeding. But yeah, those two fish there, that was a great time, man.
Oh, mega! How long ago was that? Did you say?
That would have been, I think it was 2017.
Right.
If I look at my phone now, let's have a little peek. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So if you go into my Insta, guys, it's 7th of July, 2017. There's two commons next door to each other.
Okay.
The big dark gnarly one was the first one.
But what we do as well, then, we use that common picture as the Instagram post when I make
worries.
Live as well.
Absolutely fine, mate. No problem with that.
Cool. What about your first 30? Can you remember that?
Oh. Do you know what, right? The funniest thing is that I spent quite a few years trying to catch a 30, and when I caught my first, it was like it just started the ball rolling.
Yeah.
As I said earlier, I've caught a fair few of them now. I caught my first, I'm going to tell you, it was 2014.
Right.
Again, with my mate Chris. So I'm going to tell you the full story on this. The night before, okay, I'm pretty sure this was the night before. Me and Chris had got down to this spot, and when it rains, this spot just switches on. I can't say too much, but it's an absolute goldmine when it rains. And pardon me, we're fishing.
Mm-hmm.
He was fishing down the left. We used to all cast at the same sort of distance. It was basically dense weed, and then all of a sudden it would shelf off. It was about thick weed at about 6 foot depth, and then as you get off the back of it, it just shelved down to 9, 12 foot, and it was clear, real nice shingly gravel. Basically that night, right, me and Chris ended up spending 4 hours catching fish. And he even asked me after the third fish, Dave, do you want to put your rod here, mate? And I said to him, I was like, nah. I was like, don't be silly. I was like, I'm going to hold it out. I'm going to hang it out. I know it's going to happen. I'm not trying to. I love to see my mates catching fish. As much as I wanted to put, I'm not going to lie, I did want to put my rod there, but I didn't. And later on that evening, I had a common, which was it was like 18, 19 pound, but a real nice, gnarly gold and black thing.
Mm.
And then about 11 o'clock at night, it went completely dead after that fish.
Right.
About 11 o'clock at night, you earlier saying about snags and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
This snag has come out, and it basically come out the boat to all of my rods, just all three of them. And at this point I only had 2 rods because Chris was fishing with me. Chris had 2 down the left, I had 2 out to the right in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And it had picked up, sod's law, it picked up both of my rods. So I said, Chris, get out here, get out here. And we've both picked up a rod each. It was a massive tree root ball. I'm talking like you couldn't have lifted this thing. It was massive. And it was basically just hold it until they snap, because they were going to snap, okay? And they did. They snapped. I looked at Chris and I was just like, you know what? Like, a bit depressed after that, mate. And he was just like, look, just sit there, mate. Tie up your stuff, there's fish here. Get them ready for the morning. So I did. Even though I didn't want to. Whatever time it was, I know it was late, early hours.
Yeah.
And basically I sat there, fresh leaders, fresh rigs, fresh hook baits, fresh everything, and rigs went back out. I sent one of the rods, I sent my left rod of the 2, out towards the middle at distance onto that sort of clear area that I was talking about off the back of the weed. Mm-hmm. And then my right rod, I swear to God, I pub chucked it to the right. Yeah. Pretty much into an area that I have seen the fish sort of milling. It's a bit more slack.
Yeah.
But I just chucked it out there, just put a little handful of bait around it. I was like, oh, that'll do. 7:30 the next morning, woke up to that rod, that specific pub chuck rod, just gunning off down the middle of the river. Full steam ahead, this thing was going. And bent into it, I knew it was a heavy one, you could tell with that plodding, and it was, after a while, it just started to bob on me. Bob, And after I sort of got it back to the boat, my first 30 pounder, 34 pounds, 6 ounces, fully scaled, a fish that I really want to catch again. The last capture of it was at 35.10, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. This fish has potential for 50 pounds, and it's one of the gnarliest scalies in the river. So again, first 30 pounder, off the back of that drove my obsession and my passion again. Mm-hmm. Holding that, I've never caught. I don't even think I'd even seen a 30-pound carp by that point. I've only ever seen 2 40-pound carp on the bank. That tells you what sort of style of fishing I'm doing. My friends have caught 40s, but I don't always go to sea. I've seen a Thames 40 on the bank, and I've seen a 42 mirror on the bank. I haven't seen any other. I haven't seen any other big fish. Mm. And big fish. It's definitely part of the reason that I do what I do. I am orientated by big, massive, gigantic units. People say, you shouldn't be obsessed with weight. If you're a fisherman, you've been fishing for a very long time. Well, I say a very long time, 10, 12 years for the carp. Yeah. If you haven't caught a 40, it can become a bit of an obsession. It's all good. It's really easy to say that when you've been fishing lakes and caught 40s and 50s. Why are you bothered about weight for? Well, because I haven't caught those sorts of fish. I haven't experienced that excitement. I haven't experienced that moment. Until then, I'm not going to be okay. My dream, I'll tell you now, the dream over the next couple of seasons is not only to catch the 30-pound common that I told you about, but to try to catch anything over the 40-pound bracket, mirror or common, ideally not a grassy, but a mirror or a common, Lynn, that is my out and out dream, mate.
Yeah.
I really want to catch something huge from the Thames. I was battling away, a little story for you. I was battling away in 2018 alongside a lot of good anglers for some serious fish, and pip to the post, and then started the next season. It was, there weren't even a chance of going for that one anymore. So it's all swings and roundabouts, man. You can find out where one is, and it can disappear. And But no, I've got you know, through fishing for so long, and people know what my passion is like and how driven I am to fish in the river. A lot of people are open with me, and the fact that I give people respect when I go into a stretch. I will not go into a stretch and start, fishing where everybody else is. I'll get my own thing established, and because of that, people talk to me. People
Right.
tell me things. People show me pictures, and people. Yeah, I can't say too much, but there is some good fish in the Thames, and if the otters don't get them first, then over the next few years, I anticipate catching at least a few of them, if possible.
Yeah, that's awesome, mate. So in terms of, I'd imagine you're well into prep mode then at the minute with sort of hints of spring.
Literally yesterday, I was out. If any of you was watching the Insta yesterday, I was out.
Yeah, I saw
all day. I was out all day. Again, I wouldn't usually be out this early. I'm not going to lie. I'd usually be thinking more about work at the moment and focusing on. I do have, I have club waters that I fish. I've got huge pits, that I like. I am more of a pit angler.
Yeah.
It has that aspect of that I'm known about it.
Yeah.
And the lake that I specifically fish does have that. But yeah, where was I going with that?
Oh, we talk about prep.
Sorry.
Okay.
Went well off target there. But yeah, I wouldn't usually be doing it, but with the fact with the knowing about the otters, and it's basically just, and knowing that I have to up my level this year, knowing that I have to go to stretches that I'm going into stretches this year that I haven't fished before, ever. I've never dipped a line in it. Yes, I've cycled them. Yes, I've droned them. I've been up there on the boat, but I've never fished them for carp. There are areas, there's areas within the stretch that carp can hide away in, let's say. So basically, the prep for me at the moment is just giving myself more of a chance than I would do if I just turn up at the beginning of the season.
Of course.
If I turn up at the beginning of the season on a stretch where there's 4 anglers that have been hammering in bait since mid-close season, I'm going to struggle. Yeah. So I'm starting now, so I'm ahead of them. Right. It's I guess it's a little tactic, but at the end of the day, it's not just a tactic. I love it. The part about fishing, it's not just about catching. There's never a truer word spoken. The exciting part for me is going online, searching from above on Google Maps, looking for areas that I think look serious, especially areas when I'm hearing certain things about them. And then putting those areas into little map points, and then go and get my push bike out, and I just jump on the bike and I'll go cycle stretches. And when I do that, I'll take pictures, I'll take photographs from above, from below, and see exactly what we're working with. And it's such an exciting part of fishing. The things that you stumble across, the things that building that picture before you actually dip your rods. It's mental. I love it. Just like yesterday, I could have just sat around and done bugger all. I could have just gone down to the pit and done a bit of fishing there. But with the seasons coming up and stuff, I'm getting ahead of everybody and just gonna make the most of it over the next couple, man. Yeah.
Awesome, mate.
More legwork, the better, man. The more graft that you put in ahead of time, the more chance you have of
you're just stacking those odds in your favour, aren't you?
Definitely.
Is the boat all prepped and ready to rock as well?
So fortunately with me at the moment, I personally don't own a boat at the moment, but my old man, a couple of years back, last year, the marina that I was in got a new manager, and he's an absolute douche. And he basically doubled the price. Yeah, he doubled the price of my moorings from like 2.5 to like almost 480 or something. Right. I was like, nah. So the boats went. Unfortunately, my dad went and purchased a boat for himself. And because obviously lockdown, which has been a touch for me in that respect, there's been multiple reasons why I've been able to use that boat. And not only that, but this season my old man will be out with me, and he knows how dedicated I am, and the fact that I get on fish, he's more than happy to come along and enjoy that sort of stuff too. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, the boat is ready. The boat is fully ready. It actually had to come out of the water last year, and it had to have like a £3,000 leg recon. It was painful, especially after only spending $6,000 on the boat. It's painful. But no, the boat is ready, licensed, prepped. It's even fueled and watered right now. Like, we're good. We are good to go.
Oh, brilliant, mate! It sounds very exciting. Yeah, and we'll definitely have a catch up as well, Dave, because I think it's obviously without giving anything away or sort of ruining your
Yeah,
spot.
no,
for your
I'd be more than
chances.
happy to have you to come down at some point, mate. You know, it'd be nice to have you down and see exactly,
Yeah.
in the environment that we're actually doing it in.
Yeah, an
something a little
in-session
bit
one.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly that. More than welcome, mate.
Brilliant. Awesome, Dave. We'll wrap up there. Thank you very much, mate.
No problem at all, man.